Good morning, it's Lisa with Lisa Heal Yourself, and today we're going to talk about FMTs or fecal matter transplants. Disclaimer, these are not approved by the FDA, but they're also not disapproved by the FDA. There's a handful of specialists and there's doctors with certain qualifications that can perform what they call fecal matter or fecal microbiota transplants, FMTs. I give you my experience today of an at-home fecal matter transplant that I did during my health journey. I self-administered my own fecal matter transplant, and I'm going to give you the instructions today in case that's something that you will be doing as well. So first, let's quickly go over what it is. So this is a medical procedure where bowel of a healthy individual is taken and transplanted into a bowel of somebody who is ill, is chronically ill, or particularly has certain diseases, gut dysbiosis, gut dysfunction, IBS, Crohn's, IC, and it can be delivered once you take the sample from a healthy individual. It can be delivered by enema, colonoscopy. It can be delivered by these tubes. I'm not sure what they call, the doctor does it by these tubes. It can also be delivered by capsules. So generally the colonoscopy would be for your upper, and the enema is delivered for lower gut dysfunction. But I mean, if you're doing an at-home one, your choice is pretty simple. You're going to be doing delivering it by enema. So the main disease that this fights and really has a good cure rate, like we're talking over 90% cure rate, is for C. difficile. So of course that's a bacteria of the gut, and if you have C. diff, you definitely need to be doing this. The other diseases that it benefits and we see a pretty nice significant success rate from is ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, obesity, believe it or not, if you're getting a sample of somebody who has a good metabolism and is a thin person, IBS or irritable bowel syndrome, also autism and some other neurodegenerative diseases. I tried mine for autoimmune type conditions, so there's no end to what it can be tried for. So remember, when we're taking the stool of a healthy individual, this stool contains thousands, even millions of microorganisms. They include all kinds of bacteria and yeasts, and it's the type of good bacteria that's found in a normal, healthy person. It is the exact human type of good bacteria. So this is why this is even better than probiotics. It's even better than probiotic food. It's getting to the exact source of the bacteria that is found in a living human being. So when the ill person, a lot of, as you know, disease starts in the gut, and a lot of disease has bad bacteria associated with it. So a host of pathogens, viruses, bacteria, even fungus, yeast, they outnumber the good ones. And a lot of doctors prescribe antibiotics. Well, the antibiotics you can start to become antibiotic resistant as it's killing the bacteria. And not only does it kill the bad bacteria, but it kills all the good bacteria as well. So it's really a catch-22. The bad bacteria are becoming resistant to treatment, and you're dwindling your good bacteria, and people can get sicker and sicker and sicker. I mean, just after course and course of antibiotic, this can destroy your health even further. So particularly when it comes to C. diff, because we know people get really sick. I mean, they get non-functional. Many die every year. You have like up to 13,000 people dying of C. diff every year. This year alone, 350,000 were diagnosed with it in the US alone. So when you have a treatment that's over 90% effective, this is definitely something that you want to be looking into. It really is a low cost and highly effective treatment for a lot of stomach issues, and seeing the results that we have from things like autism and even some autoimmune conditions, we can be sure that this is going to be a rising popularity. If it's not shut down altogether by the FDA, there's going to be a rising popularity in this treatment. Now, there's a clinic called the Taymount Clinic, and this is the one I would recommend if you're actually going to a clinic to get this done. You can go to them to get your whole procedure done, or you can go to them for the donor and then do the actual enema part or the capsules at home. So you could do the full with them, or you could do a partial with them, just getting the donor samples. Now, it is expensive to do this with a treatment provider, but the benefits is that you know that the stool is tested. And you just have peace of mind that these are experts that do this all the time, so they know what they're doing. Like, this can go up to $10,000 for a fecal matter transplant. And I happen to know you can do them at home safely. You just have to get a donor that you trust. The procedure is very basic and easy. It's the hardest part is selecting your donor and getting the sample, and then you're on your way. If you know how to do an enema and you've done an enema, you're going to find this not that difficult. So let's talk about donors then for a minute. Who is the prime donor? Well, I like to say keep it in the family. Okay, so especially a mother-child relationship. You've already shared fluids, you already, have birthed your child, you've shared fluids with your child, you've breastfed, you're intimately connected with a child. So a mother donor to a child, or a child donor to a mother. Also a trusted spouse, a family member, even teenagers as well. The thing I like about choosing a family member, especially if it's in the family, is that for me, I could control the diet of whoever was eating. So what I did was 2 weeks prior to the donor, I prepared foods, whole, organic, natural, grass-fed foods, all the diets on my particular diet. So everybody was eating the foods that I eat, that I would tolerate on my diet. So there was no food sensitivities in any one of my family's diet prior to this FMT. It's really important that when you're selecting your donor, you know what they're eating, and they're not eating anything that you're allergic to. If you have a severe allergic reaction to something that donor is eating, that's going to be a problem. But even food sensitivities, high food sensitivities, if you're highly sensitive to a food and they're consuming a lot of it, I wouldn't select that donor. You want to control this person's diet and make sure that all of your food sensitivities are out of their diet as they prepare. You also want to make sure that they are a healthy individual. They're not sick a lot. They don't go to the doctor. They're not on any courses of antibiotics. They're not a drug user. They don't drink alcohol. They basically get outside. They have a healthy lifestyle. This is why kids are great. They're not drug users. They're generally not sick and on medications. They're healthy, vibrant. So it's always a good choice. And again, you can control what they're eating. I wouldn't choose a child less than 3 years old. It's really important that their full microbiome has developed. So children probably, 4 or 5 years and older, and probably under the teenage years. So the real safe years are probably in between 4 and 13. These are safe years, they're not sexually active. So you don't then have to screen for any sexual diseases. That's what a clinic would do. They would test the sample for sexual diseases and AIDS and HIV. So if you already know that these people in your family aren't sexually active, they don't have sexual diseases, they don't have AIDS, they don't have HIV, then you don't really need to pay for that security, because you know they're not carrying this. They don't have STDs or HIV. The other thing that you want to make sure is that they haven't been traveling outside of the country to countries that generally have parasites and internal parasites as a concern. So you want to make sure that people haven't been there in the last few years to a country, or drinking the water from a foreign country that could give them parasites. So again, also choosing somebody with limited dental fillings is a good idea, because the oral health is really important for the microbiome. So again, this is why I love kids. They generally don't have a lot of fillings. You don't need to screen them for sexual diseases. They're eating a healthy diet that you make and give them. They're not into drug or alcohol use. They're healthy, they're active, they're vibrant. And as long as you know that they have no problem going to the bathroom, they're generally not sick, you wouldn't want to collect sample from your child if they've just had a cold or a fever or anything like that. And you could select the exact right time when everything's great, your child is healthy, vibrant, and you've been monitoring their diet and everything's on point. This is a perfect time to collect the sample for your FMT. The other things that you might want to consider was whoever your donor is, whether it's a child, whether it's your spouse, whether it's somebody in your family, were they born naturally? Did they go through the vagina canal? Because it's really important that they got that bacteria as a baby, because they're going to have an even healthier gut microbiome if they did. It doesn't rule people out, but this is what we're looking for. Were they breastfed for at least 6 months or up to a year? Again, they're going to be getting all that healthy bacteria. They got off to the right start, and this is what we're looking for in the sample that eventually comes to us. So again, they're not traveling to third world countries, they don't have sexual diseases, they're not into drug and alcohol. They're healthy, vibrant, they don't get sick a lot. They don't suffer from any of their own diseases or own autoimmune conditions or migraines or joint pains or arthritis or anything like that. We don't really want the stool of somebody who has conditions, because we are looking to get the stool of somebody who's in prime health. So even things like eczema or dandruff, you want to look. I mean, of course we can't get perfect samples, but people with bad oral health or bad breath or tonsils or gingivitis, or if they have any kind of chronic disease that you can see or that you know of, this isn't somebody that you want to do a sample with. That's why sometimes spouses, you love them, you trust them, you know what they're eating, you think they're generally healthy, but they have a few health conditions of their own or a few concerns, or maybe they're overweight, or maybe they have a few of their own health things that aren't perfect. That's why children are amazing, particularly if it's a healthy child who was had a natural birth and was breastfed. You want to stay away from anybody who has any kind of autoimmune disease, or if they've got fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome, or, obviously anything like Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis. I mean, we're staying away from anything, any kind of autoimmune condition that someone could have. Again, you want to look for, do they not go to the doctor very often? They haven't been operated on. They don't really take a lot of over-the-counter medication like Tylenol or Advil. They are also not being treated with any other medication like heartburn medication or asthma medication. They don't have any hearing problems or vision problems. Their lungs and all their major organs seem to function like they should. And so if you can answer yes to these questions, and that's why, teens are also great donors, but if you're not sure their sexual history, you're not sure if they're dabbling in drugs or alcohol, right? They could be carrying an STD, they could have drunk alcohol or been exposed to drugs, and that's not something that you can ever risk having a chance taking into your system. Teenagers are also notorious for having a lot of junk food. Even if you're feeding them a good diet, they're probably going off and having, high sugar foods or junk foods or pop or chips or chocolate bars or sports drinks. But if you want to make sure that teenager's not eating a lot of junk food or sugar or highly processed food. And also if it's a female, that they have regular menstrual cycles. So of course you may not be able to find the perfect donor, but do your best. You want to get to as close as perfect with these questions as you can before you select it. Okay, so let's assume that you can find a donor that matches the criteria that I just said. So you're going to choose your day and you're going to do a sample. So if you're planning on doing a fresh FMT, you want to use the feces within 12 hours, preferably within a couple of hours of collecting the sample, but 12 will be at the outset. You're going to take it once you collect the sample and you're going to put it in your fridge. Now, if the donor's conditions are perfect and you want to start collecting some samples, they're really healthy, they're really vibrant, you've just fed them an amazing diet for a few weeks, everything's on point, but you don't have time to do the fecal matter transplant, or it's not the right conditions for yourself to be doing it that same day, you can still collect the samples, you can freeze them, which they say could lessen the effectiveness slightly, but I wouldn't worry about it. I think the more important thing to do is to make sure that your donor's in perfect health and they've eaten the perfect diet and all of that. So even if it lessens a little bit by freezing it, better than by doing it at a time when your donor isn't in perfect health or hasn't eaten the right foods. Also, if you are thinking of a teenager and they're going through puberty, a lot of things are changing for them as they're going through puberty, including their hormones, which can affect the gut. So, during those transition years there, like 12, 13, 14, in and around that age, 15, it's hard to say whether they're the ideal donor because they're in the middle of changing and growing and developing, and everything in their body is changing and transitioning. So just want to make note, if that's your option, that's your option. But if you can have a child, under 10, that's even better. Also, if you're using an adult donor, donor, make sure that they haven't had any tattoos or piercings in the last little while, in the last up to a year. You want to make sure that they're relatively fit and healthy, that they take diet and lifestyle seriously, they're into natural health, and that they don't really have any medical conditions. They're not under tons of stress, and that they're not sick often. Okay, so let's get to how to do this. So first thing, I have my bowl of supplies right here. I'm gonna go through everything one by one. I just keep it in my cupboard, tucked away. These are the supplies that you're gonna need. So first of all, if you've ever seen these, you can get them at drugstores, you can get them at the doctor's office. This is like a collection sample. So you basically put it over the toilet, right? Put it over, the person sits down and they poo into it. It just sits on the lid. I'm gonna show you to make it easy. So now you can see what it looks like. You sit down, the person goes into the toilet and you collect the sample. Once it's in here, I like to have old plastic containers that you can throw away. Something like an old sour cream or an old yogurt tin, and you put the sample in there and it has a lid so the smell is not going to escape, and you just pop that into your fridge. So you've washed out that container, the person samples into here, you just dump it into the plastic, say it's a yogurt container, has a lid, put it in your fridge, label it. You don't want any surprises when someone goes into the fridge. Put it in a separate section, label it off limits, only you know where that is, and you're gonna take it out and use it within 2 to 3 to 4 hours. So before using the sample, you wanna take a look at a stool chart. You can look at the Bristol stool chart, and you want a 2, 3, or a 4. So if it looks like a 4, it's good to go. If it doesn't look good, you're gonna wait. You're not gonna be impatient. You're gonna do another sample. You're gonna continue on the diet for another couple of days, make sure, and collect another sample in a few days. Does it look like a 2, 3, or 4? Then that's a sample. You can put in the yogurt container, put it in the fridge, and you're good to go. Now, before the fecal matter transplant, some people like to use antivirals, antifungals, and they like to ingest them, or they've liked to have done enemas with those in them, natural herbs. And you can do that. That's kind of like to flush and to kill off the bad ones. It's like the natural way to do antibiotics before you infuse with the probiotics. But again, it's not necessary. Sometimes even just fasting for the morning or fasting for 12 or 24 hours before your enema, drinking a lot of water will do the same thing. Just flush out. You want to clean out that bowel before you're going to be doing an enema. And also sometimes I like to do a water or a saline enema prior to, so that there's not any old stool in your bowel and most of it's cleaned out, so that the new stuff coming in can stay in there longer and it's not competing. So I went ahead and did a bowel washout, like a water, a saline enema beforehand. But again, if you're doing this and you've already done your first one, you're not going to really be doing that for the second and third and fourth one, because you don't want to be cleaning out the bacteria, the good bacteria that you just put in there a few days prior. So this only would be for your first one. Okay, so let's go through some of the ingredients in my bowl. So first of all, I've taken aside my enema kit. Now you can use your enema. I was kind of grossed out by this because sometimes you can get pieces of chunky poo coming down. This is a fairly thin but long cord. And also I didn't want any bacteria to be stuck in here for future use. So I have 2 enema kits. I have used an enema kit, but it's one that I keep separate just for that. So if you don't have one that's just for that you're never going to use for your regular enemas again, I probably wouldn't go to use an enema kit, but you absolutely can. I found it easy myself to use these balls. The reason I like these is that you can get everything up into it. These are kind of messy, and with all the tubes and anything getting stuck, it can be really gross. I mean, the smell is foul when you're doing it, so I like this because it's quicker and easier. But again, I've done both. So these rectal syringes you can buy from your pharmacy, or you can probably buy online at Amazon. You can buy this from your pharmacy, but again, you can get them online. And so you can decide what kind and what type of enema you'd like to do. You're gonna need a 1/2 liter of clean distilled water. So I always use distilled water for my enemas. So I would go ahead and use distilled water here. And again, you want a 1/2 liter. You want to make sure this isn't coming out of your tap though. It cannot have any traces of chlorine in it. You don't want anything that could kill the bacteria, so no tap water. Bottled distilled water is what I use. You can also use bottled normal spring water if that's all you have access to. So I do not use my high-speed blender. I do not use my Vitamix. I just don't like the idea of feces and then using it for food later. So I have this Hamilton Beach. It's just a mini blender. It's a single cup. It's an old blender. It was super cheap. And I have this and I only use it for disgusting things like FMTs. So again, get an old blender. If you don't have an old blender, you can do this with a fork. You can mash it and liquefy it with a fork. You absolutely don't need a blender. But just the ick factor of it, I would go ahead and get this if you can. You're gonna wanna have some coconut oil on hand in a little jar or a little cup because that's just used as lubricant, just like what you would do for a normal enema. You're gonna make sure that you're doing all this and preparing all this in the bathroom. You're gonna need a large towel, an old towel. I would lay down two old towels wherever you're gonna be doing the enema, or an old blanket, as well as keep a whole roll of paper towels handy because assume you're gonna make a mess, assume there's gonna be a spillage, just be ready. You just don't wanna be caught off guard when you're talking about feces. You can use a kitchen strainer. You don't have to have a strainer at all, but you can use a kitchen strainer. This is an old thing that it's like for powdered sugar. It's like you find them in the baking aisle or at Bulk Barns for powdered sugar or sprinkles or topping like on top of baking. Well, it's just perfect to be able to put your sample or feces inside here and strain it out. So that there's no chunks or anything. So I found this super easy, and then it's nothing I ever use for food again. I didn't want to go buy a steel one and then never use it again. So I chose to use this. But again, you don't have to, or just find something that you're not going to be reusing. You're going to want to get a pair of plastic gloves. Sorry, I didn't get any for this demo. They're in the other room. But just plastic gloves. Be careful if you have a latex allergy. You want to get them non-latex if you have any allergies. Nothing like that. So just plain non-latex plastic gloves. And again, I would make sure that you have access to a sink and a bottle of vinegar for afterwards because you're gonna wanna rinse it, clean it thoroughly with soapy hot water, and then you're gonna wanna sterilize everything with vinegar and or alcohol. Okay, as for places that you should be doing this, I lay my towels down right in front of the toilet. So again, if you're right in front of your toilet, you're gonna lay down your blanket all across the floor so that you can lay down properly. You're close to it. You do not want to be too far away from a toilet. Absolutely not, just in case. The other place that you can do them is in a bathtub. So in a bathtub, make sure you don't have any clean bath mats around. If you are climbing into a bathtub, obviously I would take this off. That's a really great option to lay in a bathtub, especially if you're close enough and you can get to a toilet. But if you do make an accident at all in the bathtub, it's easy to clean out, especially if you have a wand that you can clean everything out, rinse everything out. That's really an ideal place to do it. So again, you can use saline solution instead of water to mix your stool sample with. But I just used plain water, plain distilled water, which I think is better. I just didn't want it competing with the salt at all. But I did use the saline earlier to do a flush before I went ahead and did my enema. You want to do that clean out not right before the enema, but you want to do it like 5 hours before, or even 12 hours before, or the day before. After you're finished eating dinner, and then if you could do one before bed, and then in the morning, the next morning, you're still in a fasted state, and maybe you're planning to do it around 10 or 11 a.m., and you're just drinking water in the morning. That would be the perfect time. Okay, so now it's time to do your enema. So you're gonna be taking your sample in your container out of your fridge. You're gonna be taking some water, and you're gonna be heating it up on the stove. You're gonna pour some of that liquid into the container, and you're gonna have like a disposable popsicle stick or some sort of a wooden chopstick that you can use as a stirring spoon. You're gonna stir it up because the warm water is gonna kind of like cover it and break it down into like a slurry. This part is the most disgusting part because again, it does smell. So you're kind of gonna break that down. You're gonna stir it up. This is where I said if you don't have a blender, you can use a fork, you can mash it, you can stir it until it's completely liquefied. But if you don't wanna do that, you can just get your water, get your sample, put it in here, and you wanna blend well. When you're using a blender, you only wanna blend for 5 to 10 seconds or until it's liquefied. You never wanna blend past 30 or 40 seconds because blending it too much can mess with the fecal microbiota, with getting too much oxygen in it. So once you blend it for 5 to 10 seconds, it should be like a creamy milkshake consistency. So again, you place your fresh feces in here, and then you're gonna add a half liter of water, non-chlorinated distilled water. So just for your reference, a half of liter equals 2 cups of water, or it equals 500 milliliters of water. So this is a 400 milliliter here. It's already measured on the cup. So I just add a bit more to 500, and that would be the amount that I would use in my particular blender, but you'll just have to measure it out whether you use cups or whether it's marked, but that's the conversion. When I say warm the water, you don't want it boiling, it's just slightly warm. More closer to just a warm, tepid body temperature, or just a little bit warmer, but you never want to heat or kill the microorganisms in the stool. But cold won't blend as well, so we're just heating it past body temperature. We're just heating it to like what you would give a child, a 3-year-old, for tea or for warm milk. Okay, so once you've blended it, this is your mixture. This is your medicine. It needs to get from here into your colon, and it needs to stay there for as long as possible, preferably up to 5 or 6 hours. So if you're using an enema kit now, this is when you would take your enema kit and you'd pour it all the way in. So now you'd have your medicine, your fecal matter transplant in here. When you do your enemas like this, you're gonna want to raise it. So you need to go get a stool or a chair, or make sure it's above where your towel is by the toilet, so that you have gravity pulling this down. I cannot be too clear about this. Make sure this is closed. If this is not closed and this is not tight, you will have liquid crap leaking out all over the place. It will be foul, it will be everywhere. Make sure this is closed tight, and only when you have this inserted properly are you going to open it. I can't be more clear about that. It's one thing to have an accident with an enema with this being open when it's water. It's quite another thing when it's stool. The other way you can do it is pour it into a bowl, into a plastic bowl, a clean plastic bowl, not this one, because this one housed all the other things, and making sure that they're sterile. They've been cleaned with anything that you've used. Actually, the blender, it's all been cleaned with soapy water, vinegar. It's been thoroughly cleaned and disinfected before you start your procedure. So the bowl would be, this would be, okay, so now you take this, you take your medicine, you pour it into the bowl. Why the bowl, you say? You're gonna be wearing your plastic gloves. You remove the nozzle. You squeeze all the air out of the rubber part of this syringe. I know this part's gross, but you squeeze it. You can see all the air is out of here. And you're gonna have gloves on too, so not to worry. Okay, so you dip the end of this into the liquid at the bottom of the bowl. Okay, this is like a suction. You let go, and basically like it sucks everything up into here. So you're holding it really tight, all the air's out of it, you're getting it into the liquid, and then you slowly, see if I can show you, slowly releasing as it's down in the bottom of the bowl now, and you're just kind of sucking it all up. That's how you suck it up in here. Now, turn it up right away because you don't want any of this to drip out. You're gonna have your paper towels handy, so you're gonna wipe it off. Don't worry, you have gloves on, and you stick your nozzle in. Now you've got your slurry inside this rectal syringe. Now, whether you're using the syringe or whether you're using the enema tube, you're gonna be taking all this equipment over beside your toilet or inside your bathtub. Now you're going to have a little dish of coconut oil already laid out next to you. You're gonna lubricate the ends, you're gonna lubricate inside your anus, and then you're gonna either stick the tip up or stick the tip up in, okay? They're both about the same length. They just go in. So you're gonna lay down on the floor with your knees bent on your left side. So I am gonna demonstrate this for you. So make sure you have a stool handy. This goes up, or something, a shelf, something as high up as you can so that you have gravity coming down. This is going to be just inserted in. When you get down onto your towels or your blanket, you're going to be laying down on your left side with your knees in a fetal position. So let's have a look at what that looks like. You're going to go down, curl up on your left side like this, and you would have this in your hand ready to insert. Same with the enema kit. Again, making sure that this is closed, absolutely closed. If you want to lay down inside your bathtub, you'd be doing the same thing. If you're doing the rectal syringe, when it goes in, you're going to squeeze slowly, okay? If you go like this, it's gonna come pouring out inside of you. It's gonna make a mess, okay? We're squeezing slowly, so you want a good grip. You're gonna squeeze slowly, steadily. You're gonna wanna make sure to get it all in there. Sometimes you need to use two hands. If you have a spouse or somebody who can help you and could be the person to squeeze all this, because you really kind of do need two hands so that you get all of it out and inside the body. Of course, if you're doing your enema, that's fine. You have control of it with your open-close nozzle. Now, an enema, you're gonna get a lot more because there's a lot more that can go in here. You probably have a lot more of the slurry, and this isn't as much. So you could have somebody or yourself, you could do a second one, or you could ask somebody, this is if you have a really close partner, to go back with gloves on their hand, get more for you, put back on the nozzle, and as you're laying down, if that wasn't enough, then you can insert a second round behind it. Because with this, you have the access to keep going probably up to 2 rounds. So you can do 2 in a row if you're using this, or if it's your first time, you just want to start with 1, that's fine as well. But I like to do 2 of these in a row. Now you might feel an overwhelming urge to go. Your paper towels are handy. If any slips out, you can clean it up right away. It's an old towel, so you'll be washing it at the end. But remember, you want to lie there on your side. When you're comfortable, go to your back. You're going to be rubbing your stomach, your abdomen. You're going to try to work it around. You want to try to work at your liver. You're going to be just rubbing just very gently, laying on your back for as often as you can, and then flip to your right side as well so that the liquid goes all the way down to your liver, all the way down to the other side. So you want to stay on that right side for a while, and then after you've been lying there for about 15 or 20 minutes, you can get up and you can go to a more comfortable spot if you want with your towel, or you can just lay there. Hopefully you brought a pillow or something to listen to, a podcast, or read a book, watch a show, watch a movie, get comfortable. You can get up and walk around. You certainly don't have to stay lying down the whole time, but just be ready, be near a toilet, rest if you can, lay flat if you can. It's just the time to watch movies, to rest, to sleep, to hang out, and try to keep it in you for 5 to 6 hours. If you have to expel it, that's fine. Even within the first 5, 10 minutes, half an hour, if it has to come out, it has to come out. We're not gonna worry. We can go back and we can do a little more, or we can wait and do more the next day. So after the enema is over and you've excreted and you're feeling, now it's time to clean up. Remember, you want to wash everything with hot soap and water, vinegar, really sterilize everything. But even so, I generally have a separate enema, and this never gets used for anything again. So I put my supplies away and you're ready for the next day. So just afterwards, you want to make sure that you're eating a super healthy diet, that you are you can take probiotics, you can have probiotic food. You're gonna start to help from your digestive tract, also increasing the probiotics that you're consuming. Now you can repeat this therapy every day for a week or several times a week for several weeks. So you're probably going to do between 5 and 10 courses. So you want to collect enough that you can use it for, 5 to 10 enemas. and you can do that every day, or you can spread it out over a couple of weeks. Hopefully this is all it will take. If not, you'll take a few months off, 3 to 4 months off, and then you might try the whole thing again. As you continue to include probiotic foods in your diet after the FMTs, you also want to include fiber. Having a high fiber diet and including prebiotic foods will also help the growth of the new microbiota in your gut. If you have any food intolerances or allergies, just stay away from those foods. Continue to stay. We're not going to reintroduce those foods yet. Remember to be drinking a lot of water and teas and fluids. Make sure that you are taking things like vitamin C and zinc. Zinc's essential for helping to heal. And if you do this, you do a whole sequence of 5 to 10 fecal matter transplant enemas and nothing happens, it doesn't work. Again, like I said, you could try again, but check the donor. You may need to try a different donor. If nothing happens, or by the off chance you get worse, it could have been a bad stool sample, the bad donor, it wasn't the right time, like timing, their diet was off, they weren't feeling well for whatever reason. The sample is probably the culprit. So again, after this, if you're starting to feel better, you want to increase your probiotic supplements, slowly increase your probiotic foods, slowly increase your prebiotic fiber, and then eventually when you're starting to feel well, you can do like a GAPS diet or an SCD diet, a leaky gut healing diet, and you can start to introduce foods that you may not have been able to introduce, maybe some raw milk or some kefir or dairy. You're gonna wanna start to eggs, egg yolks, things that you might have been sensitive to, bone broths. We're gonna be putting these into our diet and trying to heal our diet. A GAPS diet is really helpful for this, but again, you can go back to the diet section on that. So I know this was a lot of information, it was a long video, but it's a really great, cheap, and effective therapy, and it can be done at home if you use the following and proper procedures. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, share it around, and I'll see you in the next video.